on the souls of my grandchildren that I will not be the one to break the peace we've made here today.
What if I told you one of Hollywood's most powerful actors never chased fame, yet still helped create some of the greatest movies of all time? Most people recognize Robert Duvall from classics like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, but almost nobody talks about how close he came to living a completely different life. No spotlight, no red carpets, no Oscars. Behind the legendary roles was a quiet man who avoided Hollywood parties, walked away from fame more than once, and built a life far from the cameras. And as fans look back on his journey today, some surprising details about his rise, his struggles, and his deeply private world are finally coming to light. Because Robert Duvall's story isn't just about movies, it's about choosing passion over pressure, and why his legacy runs much deeper than anyone expected. Robert Duvall didn't grow up dreaming about movie sets or award shows. He was born into a strict military household in San Diego, where discipline came first and emotions came second. His father was a high-ranking Navy officer who spent long stretches away at sea, and when he was home, the connection felt distant. Years later, Duvall would admit those early moments shaped how he understood people, especially silence. Everyone expected him to follow the same path into the military. But there was just one problem. He was terrible at almost everything in school. Acting was the only thing that ever felt natural. After graduating, he joined the army and served overseas, though he never saw combat. Still, that experience hardened him and clarified something important. He didn't want a uniform for life. When he returned home, his parents surprisingly supported his creative instincts. He enrolled in drama school, eventually moving to New York to study under Sanford Meisner at the legendary neighborhood playhouse. Sitting beside him in class were future icons like Dustin Hoffman and Hackman, all broke, unknown, and chasing the same impossible dream. Back then, none of them had fame, just raw talent and stubborn belief. Duvall threw himself into theater, working small stages and taking whatever roles he could get. He wasn't flashy, he wasn't loud, but directors noticed something different about him, a quiet intensity that made every character feel real. And that slow, unnoticed grind was about to pay off. Because his first major film role would come from an unlikely place, and almost nobody saw it coming. His big break didn't come with a dramatic monologue or a flashy entrance. It came in near silence. Robert Duvall landed his first major film role as Boo Radley in To Kill a Mockingbird, a character who barely speaks, yet carries enormous emotional weight. Most actors would have struggled to stand out with so few lines. Duvall did the opposite. He made people feel something. Industry insiders immediately noticed. Directors started whispering about this quiet newcomer who could communicate entire stories with just a look. That performance opened doors almost overnight, and suddenly, he was being called in for bigger projects. Throughout the late 60s, he stacked role after role, proving he could disappear into any character placed in front of him. He wasn't chasing stardom. He was chasing truth. Every performance felt grounded, human, and unpolished in the best way. But then came the phone call that would change his life forever. A casting offer for a new crime drama about an Italian-American family. The movie didn't sound massive at the time. No one knew it would redefine cinema. And Duvall had no idea he was about to become part of history. Because next, he would step into a role that turned him into a Hollywood powerhouse and placed him inside one of the most legendary films ever made. And that's where everything shifted. That small crime drama turned out to be The Godfather. And Robert Duvall stepped into the role of Tom Hagen, the calm, calculated lawyer who stood beside power but never truly belonged to it. While other characters exploded with emotion, Duvall played restraint, quiet intelligence, controlled loyalty. It was subtle, and it worked. The performance earned him his first Oscar nomination and placed him shoulder to shoulder with legends like Marlon Brando, who Duvall later called both a hero and a king. Watching Brando work changed how he approached acting forever. Every moment mattered. Every pause had meaning. He returned for the sequel, but the real shock came a few years later. In Apocalypse Now, Duvall delivered one of the most unforgettable characters in movie history, Lieutenant Colonel Kilgore. Fearless, charismatic, completely unhinged in the calmest way possible. And that legendary napalm line? He knocked it out in just a take or two. Just like that, he wasn't just respected. He was iconic. Audiences quoted him. Directors chased him. Critics couldn't stop talking about his ability to dominate scenes without ever raising his voice. Yet, behind closed doors, Duvall felt boxed in. Hollywood still saw him as the great supporting guy. And he was done accepting that. Because while the world thought he'd finally made it, he was already planning his next move. And what he did next caught everyone off guard. Even after The Godfather and Apocalypse Now, Robert Duvall still felt underestimated. Hollywood loved him, but mostly as the guy behind the guy. Powerful supporting roles kept coming in, but leading parts? Those were rare. And that started to eat at him. So instead of riding the wave, he did something risky. He stepped away from big studio films and went back to the stage, starring in David Mamet's American Buffalo on Broadway. To outsiders, it looked like career suicide. Why walk away when you're finally hot? But Duvall had a different goal. He wasn't chasing fame. He was chasing respect. That bold move paid off. Not long after, he landed the lead in Tender Mercies, playing a broken-down country singer searching for redemption. The performance was stripped raw. No theatrics, no polish. Just quiet pain and humanity. It stunned critics, and it won him the Academy Award for Best Actor. For Duvall, the Oscar wasn't about trophies or speeches. He said it gave him something far more important: power, the freedom to choose his own projects, the ability to shape stories instead of just serving them. From that moment on, everything changed. He began directing, writing, picking roles that spoke to him personally. He proved he didn't need to follow Hollywood's rules to succeed. But here's the twist. Just as he finally gained full control of his career, he started pulling away from the spotlight altogether. Because fame was never what he truly wanted. And the life he built next might surprise you even more. While Hollywood kept calling, Robert Duvall slowly disappeared from it. Instead of chasing premieres and after-parties, he moved to rural Virginia, choosing open land over flashing cameras. Most stars collect mansions in Los Angeles. Duvall collected peace. Locals didn't see him as a movie legend. They saw him as the guy who showed up for lunch in small cafes, the guy who talked history with strangers, the guy who brought his farm workers out to eat and quietly picked up the bill. No entourage, no attitude, just comfort food and conversation. People who met him say the same thing. He was approachable, warm, and surprisingly down to earth. He remembered names, asked questions, listened more than he spoke. For someone who had worked with the biggest names in cinema, he carried himself like a regular neighbor. Behind that calm life was his wife, Luciana Pedraza, who became his anchor. Friends say she helped him slow down, focus on his health, and enjoy the simple rhythm of everyday life. Duvall once admitted that in his later years, love mattered more than awards ever did. He still acted when the right roles came along, but now, everything was on his terms. No pressure, no chasing relevance, just projects he believed in, and mornings spent far from Hollywood noise. And even as his appearances became rarer, one thing stayed constant. He refused to stop living fully. Because while the world remembered him As a screen icon, the people closest to him knew something else. He was just a man who valued loyalty, quiet moments, and genuine human connection, and that made his final chapter even more powerful. Even in his 90s, Robert Duvall never officially retired. He kept showing up for roles that mattered to him. He stayed active. He spent his days with his wife, close friends, and the quiet routines he had built far from Hollywood. When asked about aging, he didn't talk about legacy or fame. He talked about love, about gratitude, about simply living well. He passed peacefully at home at 95. No dramatic headlines, no unfinished business, just a lifetime of unforgettable performances, and a personal life defined by humility, kindness, and choosing authenticity over attention. And maybe that's what makes his story hit harder. In an industry obsessed with spotlight and status, Robert Duvall proved something rare, that true greatness doesn't need noise. Sometimes it's built quietly, role by role, moment by moment. Because long after the awards fade and the cameras stop rolling, what really lasts is how you lived. And by that measure, his legacy is untouchable.